So guys, the Championship did not disappoint this weekend. We've got loads of talking points to go through, a managerial departure, other managers that are under pressure, and we have all the midweek matches to go ahead and preview as well. Make sure to stay tuned for the second half of the video for those. As always, do get your thoughts in the comments down below in terms of what you made of your team's performance this weekend. But without any further ado, let's talk about the action. And we'll start out with Friday night's game, which saw Luton pick up all 3 points at Hull. Now, bizarrely, before this match, Hull went ahead and departed with manager Shota Arveladze. We've spoken the build-up to this game about how much pressure he was currently under and how this next run of fixtures was absolutely crucial for him in keeping his Hull job. But strangely enough, they decided to make that decision on the morning before a match, even when they'd been given the whole international break to go ahead and make that change. All a little bit strange, to be honest, and I think we all knew coming into this game that Hull were a little bit all over the place, and that certainly transpired in this game. An awful start to the game with that Jones own goal after just 6 minutes, and I think that Luton could sense that this Hull side is going through a real struggle at this point in time, and they more than capitalised on that. Hull had a few openings, but it was Luton who were by far and away the better team in this game. From Hull's 11 shots and 70% possession, they ultimately had no shots on target to go ahead and show from that. Henry Lansbury's goal was an absolute peach as well, cuts across the ball so well, and looking at their away records so far this season, Luton have been absolutely excellent. If they can sort out their home form, get a few wins started at Kenilworth Road, then there's no reason why Luton can't be up there once again in the Championship this season. But for Hull, the same problems coming to fruition again in terms of defensive fragility, teams getting on top of them even when they have all of the ball like they did in this game. And yeah, where do they go from here? Hull fans, I'd like to hear from you guys down below. Next then to Ewood Park, and a good win for Blackburn, 2-1 against Millwall. Millwall really need to go ahead and sort their away form out. Can't buy a win on the road as things stand. Whether this is a case of how they're being set up on the road, a little bit too deep in their shape, and negatively so, which isn't allowing them to go ahead and have those chances moving forward. It was Blackburn who were asking more of the questions in the first half, and ultimately 2 goals really emanating from some Millwall mistakes. I think that Gary Wright will have been quite disappointed with how those goals for Blackburn came around. The first one obviously coming from that long ball over the defender, misses the initial ball, and it's all a little bit of a goalmouth scramble before Tyrese Dolan pokes it home. The second goal then coming from a set piece, disappointing from Millwall's perspective, but not taking anything away from Blackburn. As sort of inconsistent as Millwall have been on the road, they can also be quite resilient and tough to break down, but they made it light work in the second half. Millwall did grab a goal back through Cooper, and they had that golden chance to level it up with the ball falling to Fleming at the far post, but he tried to go for this sort of acrobatical effort and completely scuffed his lines. But overall, deserved win for Blackburn, and a good way for them to start up after this international break. And then we had Norwich continuing on their impressive run with all 3 points away at Blackpool. Timu Pukki with the only goal in this game. Blackpool, it looked like a relatively positive start from them, and throughout this game there did look to be some decent passages of play in terms of Blackpool opening up Norwich and having some decent opportunities, but the real sinker was that mistake by Thompson to give the ball and a one-on-one to Timu Pukki. If there's anyone in the Championship you don't want to do that to, it's him, and he's got ice running through his veins to go ahead and make it 1-0. Norwich did have some other opportunities, but ultimately this was the goal to go ahead and settle them. Now, pre-game, Appleton, the Blackpool manager, made a big call for this one in dropping goalkeeper Daniel Grimshaw in favour for Chris Maxwell. Had some interesting comments about that after the game as well, in terms of how Maxwell is now going to be seen as the number 1 there. Interesting stuff. Blackpool fans, I'd be interested to get your take on it down below. To be fair to Maxwell, he looked like he had a relatively decent game in this one actually, and made some important saves for Blackpool to go ahead and keep them in this game. But to keep a goalkeeper as good as Grimshaw on the bench, yeah, it's an interesting conundrum for the manager at the moment. But good win for Norwich once again, whilst not being completely firing on all cylinders. Another 3 points for them. Next then to Ashton Gate, and to a game where we thought there'd be goals in it. In the end, we got 3 of them going in QPR's favour, 2-1 away from home. Good stuff here from QPR. They had a richly deserved 2-goal lead at half-time and played on the weaknesses of this Bristol City side. It's so frustrating because we got quite a disjointed looking performance here from Bristol City, but from the performances that we've seen of them so far this season, it still doesn't feel like they are a million miles away from being a really good side at this level. But what's consistent consistently let them down over the years has been those fragilities at the back, and ultimately QPR played upon those weaknesses. I did think there was probably an air of fortune with the opening goal, the initial shot coming off the post and that deflecting into the path of Johansson, but the second goal via Roberts was just poor defending, and structurally so from Bristol City. Wells did get that goal back in the second half for the home side, and they could have gone on to snatch a point from that point onwards, but QPR had already laid out their stall from that point onwards and managed to hold on to the 3 points away from home. Good stuff from QPR. It has to be said, they're up in the playoffs at the moment. Bristol City just sliding down the championship at the moment. Next then we head to Cardiff up against Burnley. A late fight back from Cardiff in this game. Now Burnley's game is all about having control of the tempo and sort of having the opposition where you want them, and up until the point where Burnley got that goal, you could argue that game plan was sort of going to plan. Burnley had seen more of the ball, slowly starting to carve away at Cardiff despite the home side having a few openings, and when Ian Matston delivers that ball in for Teller for 1-0, you think, okay, from this point onwards, we've seen it before with Burnley, they're going to look to go ahead and control the game from this point onwards, but that wasn't really the case, and fair play for Cardiff for those tweaks they seemed to make in the second half to go ahead and get back into this one, and in the end it took them until the 90th minute to go ahead and get that equaliser, but richly so from what I saw out of this game. The frustrating point with Burnley so far this season has been their inability to kill off games like this. They have been fairly draw heavy as things stand, and for where they probably want to be come the end of the season, but a brilliant moment for Callum Robinson. He obviously had that frustrating part with that penalty miss against Huddersfield, but a player of his quality will come up with those moments, and Romeo with the ball in and him with that 90th minute equaliser, and it looked like the stadium erupted after that point. So good point there for Cardiff, getting back into this one against a difficult Burnley side. Next then to Coventry up against Middlesbrough. We spoke about how big this game was for both sides coming into this one, given the scenarios around both of them so far this season, and an absolutely pivotal 3 points in Coventry's season. Their first win of the season. Ultimately they are still rooted to the bottom of the championship, but with those games in hand, now unbeaten in 3 back-to-back clean sheets as well, which I think is a massive factor. Maybe this will see the start of that momentum starting to switch in the right direction. It was typical that it would be Gyökeres with the goal to go on and win this game for Coventry, given his links to Middlesbrough throughout the entirety of the summer transfer window, but a top finish from him, his goals have already proved pivotal in Coventry picking up points this season. That's now 3 for the season. And from Borough's perspective, in the first half especially, they looked absolutely all over the place. A slight improvement in the second half in terms of them having a bit more of the ball, but ultimately without really crafting out any clear-cut opportunities, and Coventry went on to pick up all 3 points. So given their start to the season, the postponements and everything like that, that's an absolutely massive 3 points for Coventry. But I think we are getting into that territory now where we are discussing Chris Wilder's future at Middlesbrough. And right on cue, after recording today's video, Middlesbrough have gone ahead and parted company with manager Chris Wilder. Borough fans, I'd love to get your take on this one down below. We spoke, I cut a bit out talking about how much pressure Wilder was now under on the back of that result, but the facts are results this season haven't been good enough for Middlesbrough, and they've probably been one of the biggest surprise packages of the season so far, given how bad they've actually looked this far into this season. I was along the thought process with a lot of other people thinking that Middlesbrough would be up and around the top 3 this season, given Wilder's track record of improving teams and the elements that we saw of that Borough side under him in the second half of last season. I really thought they were onto a winning formula here, but for whatever reason it's gone sour this season, and Middlesbrough have decided to bite the bullet with him. So Borough fans, where do you go next? Yeah, this is going to send some shockwaves through the championship, no doubt. Next then to Reading 3, Huddersfield 1. We said going into this game that it wasn't going to be the ideal opener for Mark Fotheringham in at Huddersfield, given Reading's home record so far this season and how disjointed that Huddersfield side have looked up until this point, and how much time he'll probably need on the training ground to go ahead and change around their fortunes. And in the end, we got the game that a lot of us were probably expecting from this one. A catalogue of errors, with particularly the second and third goal that Huddersfield conceded in this game, but Reading asserted their dominance on this one quite early doors really. From their perspective, another absolute absolutely fantastic home performance. They just continue to defy the odds, don't they, at this point in time. Third in the table, 21 points after 11 matches. They have been by far and away the surprise package of the league so far this season, and probably in a similar ilk to how Huddersfield were seen last season, actually. From Huddersfield's perspective, it is a massive concern and a massive red flag, given how they've gone from one of the best structurally set up and defensive units in the Championship last season to the side we're seeing right now. I think that once you get yourself into this rut and this run of momentum where heads are dropping, confidence is absolutely on the floor, it is difficult to go ahead and pick yourselves up from that point. And if we don't see that new manager bounce over these next couple of matches, I will be seriously concerned for them, as I am already. Next then to Rotherham up against Wigan. With Wigan on the road this season, there just seems to be something in the water. They've looked incredibly well coached in these away matches. Every player seems to know their role, and there were some really slick moves, especially on the counter for this game, and I think it richly deserved 3 points in the end. Wilkin with the opening goal before Naylor wrapped things up in the second half. From Rotherham's perspective, just one too many players that didn't seem to be at it in this game. Don't get me wrong, there were some chances while they were 1-0 down and had one of those hit the back of the net, you know, that one that was cleared off the line by James McLean, for example. Maybe this one could have gone in a slightly different direction, but I thought that Wigan looked quite decent value for all 3 points, really, and all the sort of moving parts that have been going on at Rotherham over this international break probably having a little bit of an influence on this result as well. Rotherham need to go ahead and sort out their managerial situation sooner rather than later, with how, you know, quick and fast the games are going to be coming up in the Championship now. But Wigan, yeah, excellent on the road this season, and another top performance here. Next then to Bramall Lane for Sheffield United, playing out a 1-1 draw with Birmingham. Now, while Sheffield United were the overriding favourites coming into this game, we did mention in the preview that in years gone by, Birmingham have been a little bit of a bogey team for Sheffield United, and in the end, that came true in this game. I really think that the work that John Eustace has done with this Birmingham side over the summer has gone maybe a little bit under the radar, because they've not been the most flashy of teams so far this season, but that's now 4 games unbeaten for Birmingham, and I think they're trending in the right direction here. Been a hell of a lot more resilient than they have been in years gone by, and they also have that little bit of quality in the final third to open up teams as well. Don't get me wrong, we are still, you know, very much in the, you know, early days of this season, and a bad run would see any side drop down the Championship like a stone, but 11 games in, I think the indicators have been fairly positive for Birmingham, considering this was a side who we all expected to be right down there at the start of the season. From Sheffield United's perspective, it was another goal from Ollie McBurney. He's just been absolutely on one since he managed to break that goal-scoring duck, but Deeney's goal managed to bring this one back, and then Birmingham defended the point well from that point onwards. So a couple of points dropped there from Sheffield United, but great fight back from Birmingham. And it's no surprise to see the only goalless draw of the weekend in the Championship involves Preston North End. Another 0-0 played out, this time between Sunderland and Preston, and more frustration really for North End. Now, in isolation, and we've said this a few times with Preston so far this season, this isn't a bad result for us, but given the overarching picture that we've only scored 3 goals this season, it is becoming a real cause for concern. From Sunderland's perspective, I thought they carried a threat in this game. It wasn't their finest performance of the season, but especially their 2 wide men were looking as 2 of their more proactive players in this game. They were just missing that little bit of quality in the final third that, had Ross Stewart or Ellis Sims been fit for this game, Sunderland probably go on and kill off this game. Positive to take from North End's perspective, once again really resolute at the back. You can see why we've not conceded many goals this season. Another top performance I thought from Liam Lindsay, and Freddie Woodman dealing with everything that was thrown his way as well. To be fair to Ryan Lowe, he did try and tinker with the system a little bit for this one. He put Brady a little bit further up the pitch as part of that front 3, moved Alan Brown out as that right wing back and gave Alvaro Fernandez a start. And while there was a positive sort of opening 10 or so minutes of this game where we showed a little bit more intent to get forward, I thought there was a massive disconnect between our forwards and our midfield, and I think that massive gap has been a real issue for us this season, and probably a contributing factor as to why our strikers have looked so isolated at times, and those midfielders haven't been chipping in with those goals. So once again, it's Groundhog Day at North End. In isolation, this isn't a bad point, but taking into consideration the overriding picture, the lack of goals is becoming a real concern now. Next then to Swansea 3, West Brom 2. Now while there still were some of those mistakes creeping up for Swansea in their backline, with West Brom getting in on a few occasions, a brilliant fight back from Russell Martin's men in this game. And they're on a good run of form now, 3 wins from their last 4 matches. Michael Obafemi with that brilliant winning goal, the touch then spin on the spot. Reminded me of a goal that Dwight Gale scored for West Brom that was quite similar to that finish. But yeah, brilliant strike, and I'm sure it was a brilliant away end to be in for the Swansea fans. From West Brom's perspective, this season has been a complete mess up until this point, and I think this could be the final nail in the coffin for Steve Bruce, if I'm being honest. Nothing has been decided as of recording right now, but all the rumblings that we're getting out of the club, it seems like the confidence in Bruce has been lost, and backed up by the results that have transpired since he's taken over the job. I mean, it's been absolutely diabolical at West Brom, and despite some promising signs now and again in terms of the underlying numbers and things like that, there has just been too many performances and instances of matches like this. Obviously in midweek I'll get to see first-hand West Brom as they come to Deepdale, but yeah, this was another mess and a bit of a collapse from West Brom, but fair play to Swansea for playing on those weaknesses, and a brilliant finish by Obafemi in the sham before that to go ahead and get them back in the game. And then for the last game of the weekend, we had Watford beating Stoke by 4-0. Really ugly stuff from Stoke's perspective, who completely rolled over in this game, I think, which was most disappointing, and maybe a little bit confusing as well. Before the international break, it seemed like Neil had started to get this Stoke side trending in the right direction. It was back-to-back clean sheets, but Watford absolutely caught them cold for this game, and a perfect start to life as Watford manager for Slaven Bilic. He went to that back four as we expected him to in this game, and listen, while you have talent in the Championship that are as good as, you know, Keenan Davis, Sarr, Asprilla, Sema, João Pedro to add into the mix on top of that, you are going to create chances and you are going to be clinical in front of goal, and that's exactly what Watford were in this game. To be honest, the 4-0 scoreline in the end, it could have been even uglier given how Stoke performed, especially defensively so in this game. You know, after that first goal had went in, and the second goal especially, they just seemed to roll over in that second half, which I'm not sure Alex Neil will take very lightly. I'm sure there'll be strong words said by him coming up for a reaction from Stoke, but great stuff from Watford, great start for Bilic. But guys, they were all the matches that we had taking place in the Championship over this weekend. We also have the midweek fixtures to go ahead and dive into, so we will go ahead and predict how we see those games going now. And so as always, do get your thoughts in the comments down below. Starting out at Ashton Gate for Bristol City up against Coventry. Good opportunity here for Coventry to start to build a little bit of momentum on the back of that first win of the season. Bristol City, while they have looked suspect at the back, will always carry that threat going forward, and I think I see a draw being played out between these two. 1-1 I'm saying in this game. Luton up against Huddersfield. Huddersfield could just do with getting some momentum from anywhere at the moment, but this one I do see as being quite tricky. While Luton haven't, as of right now, properly got up and going in their home matches, I do see them as the better side in this game. 2-0 Luton I'm going in that game. Sheffield United up against QPR will be a good indicator of where this QPR side are at this point in time. Good run of form at the moment, but away at Bramall Lane against a Sheffield United side who will be desperate to get back to winning ways. I just think the Blades might edge that one. 2-1 I'm saying, but QPR will obviously carry their threats. Sunderland up against Blackpool. Sunderland did almost everything right apart from putting the ball in the back of the net in their game against Preston, and Blackpool, a similar sort of story for them recently, playing some nice football but ultimately without all too much end product. I just think that Sunderland may edge this one with that home advantage, 1-0 or something along those lines. Cardiff up against Blackburn. We'll see if Cardiff can build a little bit of momentum on that last minute equaliser against Burnley. I think I see a similar game being played out against Blackburn. I'm going to go for a 1-1 in this game, although Blackburn haven't exactly been very draw heavy so far this season. Reading up against Norwich will be a really interesting indicator of where this Reading side are at this point in time. No one can question their home record up until this point though, and while Norwich have been getting wins and results recently, there have been some underlying elements to their performances which would suggest that a side like Reading could have a little bit of joy against them. I'm going to go for a draw in that one, I think. 2-2 2-2. I see a few goals being scored there. Burnley up against Stoke. Alex Neil will be absolutely desperate to get some sort of a reaction from his players, but I think I'm edging with Burnley with this one with home advantage. They weren't at their best over the weekend, but could really sense the opportunity to smell blood here against the Stoke side, who looked all over the place against Watford. Hull up against Wigan. I'm not doubting Wigan's away record at this point in time. I think I've got to back them for all 3 points in this one with how lopsided Hull have looked, especially in the defensive third this season. 2-0 Wigan, I'm saying, for that game. Middlesbrough up against Birmingham. With the way Birmingham are, especially the way they set up away from home, I could sense a away win here, a Birmingham 1-0 or something like that. I just think with the way that Borough are playing, I'm not confident enough to go ahead and back them in this sort of match. So 1-0 Birmingham, I'm saying for that game. Rotherham up against Millwall. Rotherham could do with sorting out their managerial situation and getting back to winning ways. Up against the Millwall side, who haven't been great on the road so far this season. I'm going to back Rotherham in that game for all 3 points. 1-0, but I do see it being a fairly tightly contested one. Watford up against Swansea should be plenty of fun. Slaven Bilic in at Watford now, how ruthless they looked in the final third, but the same could be said about Swansea at the moment as well. I do still think that Swansea have their vulnerabilities at the back though, and a side as good as Watford I think could capitalise on that. I'm going to say 3-1 Watford there, but Swansea have thrown a few spanner in the works to my recent predictions. Last up then, to deep delve for Preston up against West Brom. I think I've got to do it. I'm going to bank on another 0-0 for Preston here. It would be a massive shame if we weren't able to crack this West Brom side, given how fragile they've looked at the back this season. Bruce is under massive pressure as of right now, but I think I'm going to go for a 0-0 in that one, to be honest. So, as you can see to the side of me, those are my score predictions heading into the midweek matches in the Championship. Do let me know down below what your score predictions are going into those games. Guys, there we have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. As always, if you're going to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and do stick around and subscribe for some regular Championship content. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.